Good morning or afternoon, and welcome to Extending Your Brand Through Content Repurposing. Today's webinar is brought to you by Salesfusion. My name is Kevin Miller, and I'm the Vice President of Solution Strategy for Salesfusion. It's my pleasure to speak to everybody about this topic today. Briefly, what we're going to cover in the session, there's a couple of things that I think are relevant that we need to talk about when we talk about content and content marketing and repurposing content. That's firstly, this whole notion of self-directed selling and how that drives the need to develop very good content. We'll talk at length about that and what the impact of content that we're pushing out to the web has on what we call self-directed selling. We're going to understand the different types of content that we're pushing out and the different ways that content can be consumed. And then, of course, dive into this whole notion about how we can repurpose content to drive longer-term engagement through sales nurture programs in our organizations. Briefly, we want to introduce you to the concepts of self-directed selling, particularly in B2B environments. The buyer journey has become self-paced, and what that means is how people find, evaluate, and then engage with you online is occurring in such a manner that people are doing it by themselves, using the different web properties that exist without engaging with your salespeople. And there's been a lot of research done into this. Serious Decisions is a great analyst firm that does a lot of analysis and evaluation of top-of-funnel selling. And what they found in last year's survey that they put out was that as much as 70% of what we call a buy cycle is self-directed and potentially even completed before somebody is willing to engage with a salesperson. People are using the web to find products and services to evaluate. They're using what we call the social web to do what's called self-evaluation. And then finally, once they make it through that period of time, at that point, and only at that point, are they willing to engage with sales personnel. This is directly related to content because it's, in effect, a side effect of and a cause of the amount of content that we're pushing out to the web today, and we'll discuss those concepts. So when we talk about the impact of content on this whole notion of self-directed selling, what does it mean? Firstly, think about what we as marketers are doing with content and all the different content types we have at our disposal today. We're pushing and pushing and pushing content out to the web in the hopes that people are going to find it, consume it, and engage with it. What has occurred is B2B sales cycles, which used to be slightly more of a straight line. I say slightly because there was always this consideration phase where you're going round and round and back and forth, but those were historically controlled by sales personnel. Today, this consideration phase, which occurs after awareness, where people are doing research, sharing, trust development, comparatives, and peer review, is all occurring in the absence of a salesperson being engaged with somebody. So we're relying very heavily on the content that we're pushing out to keep people engaged during this consideration phase so that we can get them into the purchase decision phase, which is typically at that point when we're engaging with salespeople. Buyers are looking to self-educate. Content marketing is how companies can stay relevant to buyers in this stage. The social web, what we define as the social web, is a combination of things. It's not social media networks. Let's not confuse the two. It's a combination of your corporate website, your blog, online directories, social sites, what people are saying about you in social sites potentially. It's all the different digital properties that exist that people can use to find information about products and services and then evaluate them. Content itself should be designed to complement sales activity. There's more tools for sales to use in the cycle. There's lots of cool little, online PowerPoint type tools which salespeople can use in prospecting. There's just generally more tools available to sales other than the regular product slicks, the occasional case study, and maybe, if you're lucky, an analyst white paper. There's much more content that sales has available to them today. Unfortunately, what's happening is marketing is pushing so much of this content out to the web, sales isn't getting a chance to use as much of it as they would like to. Content is meant to keep prospects engaged during periods when sales is not talking to them, which can sometimes be lengthy, depending on where people are in the cycle. You think about a sales cycle, they can be anywhere from 3 to 6 to 9 months. There may be periods of time where sales is not talking to a prospect for 15, 30, 45, 60 days at a time. What can content do during those periods of time to keep those people engaged and keep your company top of mind? Sales is going to leverage content in social and direct email prospecting activities, no question about that. Content can help validate the sales brand and the message, assuming everything is consistent. It also can create this trusted advisor status early in the sales cycles. If your content is very good, if your content is educational in nature, if your content is helping people learn how to solve a problem, before your salespeople engage, you can start to build that notion of a trusted advisor. Now, in traditional selling cycles, salespeople, good ones, can establish that trusted advisor status with a prospect. We can also supplement that by having our content build that concept of a trusted advisor as well. Content is so important to B2B marketing. There's actually now industry trade associations that are focused just on content marketing. It's a content marketing association. There's Content World. There's a number of different trade shows, associations, and analysts who are looking very closely at content marketing and how it's being used and how effective different types of content are. These are a few graphics that were pulled out of last year's content marketing annual survey. While these are focused around technology marketers, because technology marketers tend to have an earlier adoption phase of different types of content, these are very much industry neutral, in my opinion. What they're looking at is what's being used, right? Who's using certain things. So social media content, other than blogs, 91% of companies are using that. Case studies, 86%. Videos, 86%. Blogs, 85%. E-newsletters, 84%, and so on and so on and so on. So there's a myriad of different content types that folks are leveraging very consistently. And there's diversity. Many of the new types of content are being built to meet the growing needs and the growing number of channels. Channels from social networks to blogs to different ways that we can distribute content online. Direct response to how people discover and evaluate solutions online. That's the amount of content is a direct response to the acknowledgement that people are self-selling. So we have to push more and more and better and more interesting and unique types of content out. Everything from, flash-based flip books to quick hit videos. It creates a content flood. Like anything, when there's a lot of stuff out there, it's hard for your stuff to get noticed, to rise above the noise and make an impact. Okay, if everybody's doing it, everybody's flooding the market, flooding the online digital universe with content, how does your content get noticed? And these are challenges that we have to think through as marketers. What's working in content marketing? So they looked at the effectiveness ratings of tactics among different companies who use them. Okay, webinars reign supreme for direct lead generation content. 70% felt it was effective, 30% say less. Video consumption has risen, and people believe that videos are extremely effective. Quick, short videos, blogs, research, ebooks, evergreen content is still very important. It spans the brand, the image, the lead generation capabilities, etc. The content has become more consumable. So in the past, if you were to go out and commission a research paper or white paper, the bigger it was, the better. We want a 20-page paper, an ebook, etc., and we want it to be filled with charts and statistics and really long because it's going to make it look like we really know what we're talking about. That philosophy has changed a bit to more infographic style, where we're giving quick hits on 1 to 2 pages. It's easily consumed, not a lot of words, not a lot of text, more image heavy. The videos have gotten shorter, kind of quick hit animated videos. Blogs, 500 to 750 words. What does all this mean? We're trying to really get messages out there and entice people to consume them by making them very easy to consume. So think about that as you're developing content. Think about, you need a combination of things. We need a combination of those big, thick, heavy white papers and ebooks to make us gain credibility and have a really nice piece of content. But the reality of the fact is that for those casual digital browsers who are out there looking to learn something quickly, we really do have to focus on consumable content. There's no shortage of challenges when it comes to creating content. There was a research study done by Tech Validate called the State of B2B Content Marketing. It's a survey done, and they do it every year, and it's growing in its importance as a survey that most marketers need to get their hands on and take a look at. It talks about what are the biggest content creation challenges that people are facing. 61% in 2013 said it just takes too much time. 38% is too labor intensive. 15% we lack expertise. 28% it costs too much money to procure. When you start getting down a little bit, we can't get customers to talk. 38%. That's always a problem. Shortfall of content for all requirements. 35%. So these are just the issues that people are having. The it takes too much time one, though, hands down, is the biggest one, especially when we're dealing with, we're not dealing with global multi-billion-dollar corporations when we're dealing with, relatively small marketing teams, 3 to 5 people, SMBs, mid-market companies. Everybody's so focused on getting their job done that they oftentimes don't have the time to actually sit down and build out content. And creation of content is a skill set in and of itself. You have to, first of all, really know what you're talking about. You can't just sit down and pen a piece about a new government regulation unless you know everything there is to know about that government regulation. So you need people with knowledge capital, which you may or may not have on staff. Worse, you may have those people on staff, but they may be so busy that you have no access to them. Given how people find, research, and consume content in the buy cycle, the things we've been talking about, not investing in content is not an option anymore, or you're going to be left behind as an organization. What's working in content marketing? Oh, I'm sorry, I went backwards. Let me go forwards there. Creating a content strategy. One of the most important things that people can do is create at least some rudimentary content strategy. And usually that begins with some kind of a grid where you've got who your target audience is, what the goals of that audience are, how you want to engage with them, meaning which channels, at what frequency you want to push content out, and then metrics behind it. This was a really nice way that you can kind of look at how we can go about at least creating a beginning. And I will tell you that having been involved in many organizations who struggled with this, if you don't do this, if you don't draw it out in something as simple as a spreadsheet, it will never get done. You have to understand content types and then assign owners who can have a plan for content creation. The authors, are you going to go internal, external, or net new hire? Social, what's the role of social going to be in your content? How are you going to socialize that content? So there's a tie-in with your social strategy here as well. And if you don't have a social strategy, sometimes a content strategy can be the precursor to a good social strategy. Because most often people don't have a social strategy because they don't have any content to put out. They have no idea what to post in a Facebook page. They have no idea what to put on their company LinkedIn page other than links to product pages on their website. Goals. Understanding your goals is going to be very, very important. These don't have to be financial goals. These could be goals to increase traffic to your website. These could be goals to get X number of followers on Twitter. These could be goals to get X number of followers to your company page on LinkedIn. Goals to get X number of reads on your blog each week. As marketers, we invest a tremendous amount of money trying to drive traffic to our websites. With content marketing, oftentimes this is the main way to get people into our website. Oftentimes, production of content can be free if done properly and internally. In creating your content strategy, the first thing you want to do is define the types of content that you're capable of producing as a company. When I say capable, meaning what resources do you have on hand today, that can begin to produce content today? Even if you're not ready to use it, how can we begin to produce content today? The first and foremost would be a blog, and we'll talk quite a bit about blogs. Then would be webinars. I'm going to include webinars in there because they're highly effective. And as you're going to see as we get later into the presentation, they are the best source of content to be repurposed. And then finally, evergreen content. Your papers, your internal, your external, your purchased papers, your articles, your infographic, and your news. That's evergreen content that you'll own and can be repurposed over and over and over again. We then have to categorize. Take an inventory of what you have on hand. This is one of the things that most people do not do. You may have a sales team of 10 salespeople, a couple of pre-sales people potentially, client services people, consultants on staff, depending on what your products are, maybe implementation specialists, support specialists. The collective knowledge of that group of people is amazing. The collective content that they probably have on their hard drives that you don't know about as a marketer is near infinite. And unfortunately, we don't go out and we don't sit down with sales and say, can I get a look at the last 10 presentations you've given in a sales presentation? Salespeople are going to know more than anybody else what people are interested in and thinking about and talking about. They're face-to-face with somebody in many cases, and they're talking about an issue that's going on in an industry, engaging reactions and saying, wow, this is really resonating with this person and that person. Unfortunately, that world is so very far removed from marketing that we don't know about it at all or know that it even exists. Marketing may create PowerPoint templates and give a PowerPoint template to sales, and then sales is off and running with it. Sales could be deep in LinkedIn groups, prospecting, reading what's going on in LinkedIn groups. So your sales team, in my opinion, is the first source you need to go to and look for things like presentations, data sheets, brochures, old webinars, old case studies. If you're relatively new to your company, if you've just joined your company within the last year or so and your company's been around a while, and I'm charged with building a social and content strategy, the first doors I'm knocking on are every salesperson in there saying, can I get a look at all the materials that you use during a sales cycle? That's going to be the basis. Most of the time, a lot of the information they're going to have is going to be old. It's going to be out of brand, so it's going to require a marketer's touch to it to clean it up and get it ready for consumption. Categorize this content into areas, and these are probably the 4 areas that you would most commonly use. Thought leadership, product, tips and tricks, and then competitive information. On the thought leadership side of the fence, that's where webinars, infographics, white papers come in. Tips and tricks, infographics, blogs, product, your data sheets, your competitive, how you compare against others in your industry. We start getting into the notion of repurposing content, and we'll talk first about blogs. Blogs have a material impact and benefits on your brand and your lead generation. They may not be, hey, I've gotten 10 leads this week because people read my blog. But what happens is with blogs, you're going to get more pages that are indexed for SEO, and that's a good thing. Blogs can be written in very keyword-rich manners that help you get found in SEO. They can drive regular, but more importantly, they can drive repeat site visits. If your blog is good, it's high quality, and it has a subscription management tool with it, then you're going to be able to communicate with people each time we put a new blog post out. Give sales a prospecting tool. Salespeople love blogs because it gives them a reason to reach out to somebody, even if it's just a casual email. Hey, I know we haven't talked for 2 weeks since our sales meeting, but we just posted this really interesting blog, and I thought you would find it cool. It allows you to show your expertise and your point of view. What blogs allow you to do is present your expertise, your knowledge in a slightly more casual manner than your corporate website. Finding content and regular authors for blogs in most companies is a huge challenge. Here's a couple of tips. One person has to own the blog in the company. If you don't have it that way and you don't make it part of their job and part of their evaluation criteria, your blog is going to rot in a corner. Create topic interview sheets for internal employees. Look for guest bloggers, direct hire, crowdsourced, freelance, or maybe even your customer base. Tap sales to help create content. They know what people are talking about, as I mentioned. You can maybe just sit down and interview your salespeople. What's interesting to prospects right now? What are the top 5 topics that who you present to? What do they care about? And at least generate a series of topics. And then you can perhaps give those topics to different people in your organization and say, can you just, in a couple of paragraphs, write what you think about this? Okay. Now, oftentimes when you're doing that, people will say, yeah, I'll get to it. Yeah, it's a blog, so there's no due date, and I don't really care about it because I got to get my job done, so it's going to sit, and I'll get to it sometime. So you do have to create some different ways that you can incent people to do it. They should complement your product, your services, and your industry categories. If you're in healthcare, we're going to write a lot about the new healthcare laws, whatever. We're going to write a lot about new trends in drug development, whatever. So there should be an industry component to it, and there should be a service and a product component to it. Your salespeople are going to be really tuned in to those last things, the product, the service, the industry component. So again, I can't stress enough, finding time to sit down with salespeople is a wealth of information. Procuring blogs internally can be accomplished using the interview method. So what we do is we create interview sheets for internal employees that have a due date associated with it. And then you have an incentive to internal employees with some nominal gift, a $25 Starbucks card, a $25 Amazon card. Paying $25 for a good blog post is a bargain if you're doing it internally. You may end up finding people in your organization internally who like writing blogs, and they'll start to produce them on a regular basis for you. The fact that you can go out and hire a third-party company to blog for you, that cost of that is usually about $35,000 to $50,000 per year. If you can procure that internally for $25 a post, you are absolutely ahead of the game. You'll need to put a due date on it. Say, if you complete your blog by Monday the 1st, you'll get a $25 Starbucks card. If you don't complete it by then, there's no Starbucks card. So again, a little bit of a carrot and a stick approach. Categorize them so that your executives are getting a series of questions versus your product, your training, your service people, and tailor those questions to which departments they're in. Sales, what are the top 5 pain points you talk about in a sales cycle? Why is this issue important to the industry? How does this issue impact customers? What is changing in our industry? How do our clients manage the issue? How do our products and services help companies deal with this issue? The interview method is the most effective way to get people who normally won't dedicate time to writing a blog to do it. Case studies. Similar for case studies. This has worked for us in the past. As a consultant in other companies, I've used this to help companies procure content in the past. It's basically the interview method, except it's going out to external customers. You have 7 to 10 questions, no more than that. You don't want to take a lot of time of your customers. You'll create interview sheets. You're probably not going to be quite as harsh on a due date as you would be with internal employees. You would put an offer out to your entire customer base. You have it, let's say you're using Salesfusion. You've got an email solution in-house. You would send an email out, bring people into a form, let them fill their responses out in a form. When they hit that send button, you thank them for their time, and off goes a $25 Amazon card, or a discount on something you sell, or a free month of service, whatever. Again, when you have to think about this in the context of how much it costs to go out and hire a dedicated copywriter, $50,000 to $60,000 a year at a minimum for someone who's good, or hire a company, a third-party content procurement company. $35,000 to $40,000 to $50,000 to even $60,000 a year, depending on how often you're using them. So when you look at those costs, these are easy costs to swallow. If you're able to go out and procure things like case studies, there are a number of ways that we can repurpose that content. So getting one case study in should not mean that it's going to sit in a PDF on the website and that's that. You can create a 1 or even a 2-part blog in the interview format, pulled from the interview sheet. The reason you do it in the interview format is then you write a blog like you're interviewing somebody in a blog. Now, obviously, you have to get permission from the customer first because you don't want these to be anonymous. If they're anonymous, they tend to not have as much impact. And many of your customers are going to like the fact that their name's up on a website and they're being interviewed. It's going to make them feel important. It's going to make them feel great. You just kind of like read a newspaper article where somebody is interviewing somebody, and you kind of format it that way. And again, if it's a decent size, you can keep it to 500 words and you can break it into 2 pieces. You can have a webinar featuring a case study where you have 3 to 5 slides about your company, 2 slides about the issue, 3 to 5 slides about the customer that solved the problem using your product. And you could break each slide out. Each slide would be the header of the slide would be the question, and then the bullet points would be how they answered that question. The amount of information you can gather from one of these simple interview sheets is amazing. You could feature it as a post on your Facebook and your LinkedIn pages. You can either feature the blogs or maybe tease it in to do like a 1-part blog with 3 questions, and then you say read the full case study, online, and click there. And of course, you can have multiple tweets about it. Webinars. I call them a content bonanza. they generate a tremendous opportunity for content repurposing. There's multiple variations of the content theme that can very easily be created. Content can also be extended over a very long period of time, 6 to 12 weeks if need be. And webinar leads historically, in any other channel, they have the highest conversion rates of any other type of inbound lead. So when we talk about repurposing content, it's almost like a web of content. It's a good way to look at it. You've got your main webinar PowerPoint. What you guys and gals on the phone right now are watching is the webinar PowerPoint itself. So you have that. What that should do at a minimum is be converted into a PDF document that can sit on your website. It could be sent out as part of email campaigns. It could be linked as an asset in your LinkedIn page. You could tweet a short URL link to your PDF. There are many, many ways to promote a PDF document of the webinar. There are external websites like SlideShare where you can publish it to SlideShare. And then in addition to just the static PowerPoint, you may have a video. So we will create a video of this today that will immediately go up on YouTube. We will then tweet, share, and post the video over the next couple of days from YouTube. That's, again, meant to drive traffic back into our site. It's keyword related with YouTube. YouTube's owned by Google, so it's only going to benefit your SEO that your videos are going up on Google. If you have a Q&A session, if you've got an industry expert online who's fielding questions at the end, if you're using a webinar platform like GoToWebinar, it will record all the questions that people ask. You could take all those questions and create an FAQ document or a Q&A, which can go out to everybody that attended and registered, but it can also be a standalone asset that you can put in a blog post, tweet about, publish it to your LinkedIn page. Finally, infographics. You could take a wealth of content like you've seen in this today with statistics, etc., and you can go out and generate infographics. Infographics are interesting because they're part of that short consumable content. It would be important for everybody to note that you can go out and Google infograph tool. And there's actually about 3 to 5 good free tools on the market today which allow you to generate your own infographics using those nice, flat colored, big bubble, infographics that you see online. So I encourage everybody today, when you leave this session, if you're struggling with, I wish I could create an infographic, but I don't have a budget to hire a graphic designer, by all means go out and Google free infographic tool. And you will see 3 to 5 hits come right up at the top. And you go into those, you sign up on their site. Now there's a paid version to it and there's a free version to it oftentimes. Try the free version out, you get comfortable with it, and then you can use it to create some cool infographics. Now when you think about this, right, so you've got the weeks leading up to your webinar, and then you have multiple weeks following your webinar. You can kind of take that and break that content out for multiple weeks following the webinar to have a whole nurture campaign around this. The other thing is you could take your webinar, promote it in your blog, promote it through short URLs, give those short URLs to your salespeople, let them use it, and then all the content generated after the fact, sales can then use in their follow-up prospecting. Not just to the people that showed up, but, hey, we did a webinar last week. I know you didn't attend, but I thought you'd find it interesting. Here's a video. A couple days later, hey, I know it's tough to sit down and watch a video, so here's an infographic about the stuff we covered. You interested in talking about it? So you see, it just kind of spawns a whole sequence of content from one. The production of the webinar itself, the creation of a webinar PowerPoint, that's not an easy thing. I'm not going to pretend that it is. You have to have somebody that really is skilled at that. Depending on what industry you sell in, okay, let's say you sell in, I don't know, healthcare compliance. There's associations out there, and a lot of times those associations will have what's called speakers bureaus. If you are a part of an association, go to their website and look for Speakers Bureau. The Speakers Bureau is going to be professionals who are typically in the consulting or very senior roles or advisory roles, and they will sell their knowledge to you for a fee. I can either hire them to speak in a webinar, or I can hire them to write a white paper. I can hire them to produce a webinar PowerPoint. The prices for speakers is going to vary. They are lower than going out to an agency and purchasing it. You can usually go out and procure, speaker or even some materials for somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,500 to $5,000. Now, you may think that's a lot for one webinar, but when you think about it from the perspective of what we just talked about, all the different content that one webinar spawns, the value of that can't be understated. The extension into social networks is one. If you're not really doing what you consider to be a good job on social networks. And if this was in a face-to-face conference, I'd say everybody who thinks they're awesome at social media marketing, raise your hand, and 3 hands from real cocky people would go up, and then the rest of the people would say, yeah, we stink at it. Getting one good piece of content like a webinar can really jumpstart your social strategy. All the content should be socialized in multiple ways. Regular tweets, regular LinkedIn company page updates. Every time you have something new, a new piece of literature, that should go in a blog post. Then it should go on your LinkedIn company page. Then you should tweet about it, and then you should push it out into Google+. So when you think about the notion of a video, think of all the different things you could do with a webinar video once you have it up on YouTube. These things also give sales the ability to share content via short URLs or their own publishing tools. So once you have a piece of content and you generate a short URL for it and give it to sales, hopefully some of your salespeople are going to be really savvy at Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, and they can even extend it further than that. Gamify the social sharing process. I know internally at Salesfusion we have someone in charge of social media, and we use a tool where they actually report on who's the top poster of the week. And what starts to happen is people get jealous. They'll see that, oh, that guy sitting next to me, he got the top post next week. I'm going to beat him next week. So gamifying the process of social media with internal employees can have a huge benefit. And contests, I'm big on contests. So, any time we can say, hey, the top social poster of the month gets, gets a $100 gas card to help you, offset the cost of driving into work next week. Things like that will get people excited, engaged about your brand. They'll get them participating actively in the content repurposing strategy. And it changes a little bit of the dynamics of your company itself when people start to get incented to produce, and they'll be so proud of their blog post, or they'll be so proud of their document that they created. It's like they'll be like a proud parent. The whole notion of nurture-based marketing is based on content marketing. So marketing automation platforms, which is what Salesfusion is. We're a marketing automation platform. We do all the stuff that marketers like to do from a technology point of view. The landing pages, the lead scoring, the nurture programs, all that wrapped in a single platform, then plugged into your CRM system. Nurture marketing, though, where you can kind of build these conditional campaigns. People can enter them when something happens. They're all based on content. And, they're also going to combine both marketing and sales actions across the board. The content that we're putting into them tends to be very personalized content, delivered over some extended period of time, a week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks. When I tell people about building nurture programs from the start, I tell them to think in terms of a funnel, where the top of the funnel is your most educational content, your big stuff, your big guns, your webinar, your research paper. Your product stuff is at the bottom, because if people are still engaged by the 5th email, it's probably okay to start beating them over the head with some product information or competitive information. Here's why we're the best at this. Sales is going to be directly engaged in nurture campaigns, and in really interesting ways. Like if somebody opens or clicks an email, you can fire an alert off in CRM that says, hey, so-and-so just clicked on a link. Maybe you should try making an outbound phone call today. But you can also get sales involved by prompting them to share content or personalizing the emails so that it looks like it's coming from the individual salesperson. So there's some neat things you could do there. Nurture marketing is super important because people's inboxes are so jammed up today with bulk email that it's really the direction that everybody's going. I want to figure out what's the right content to deliver to the right people at the right time. We've all heard that 1,000 times over. It's really coming to fruition now with nurture programs, because if somebody comes to my website and I've got 3 verticals and they select the healthcare vertical, I want to make sure that every piece of information I give them from here on out is specific to healthcare. We'll take a quick pause, and we're actually going to stop the recording